Revenge films.
My wife, Wendy, was an absolute anti-waste monster. And even if things were expired already, she would easily try to use them. Whenever I opened up the fridge, it was filled with produce that was already expired because she bought it cheap at the grocery store. Whenever I saw that, I always tried to throw it away. But my wife's habit was to say that it was a waste and refused to throw them out. However, I couldn't get myself to try to use produce that had already changed color or was seeping liquid, so I threw it away. However, whenever I would open up the fridge the next day, I would be faced with the terrifying fact that it was back in the fridge. This was an everyday routine. On that day, when I opened the fridge, I found a pack of what looked to be pork, but with green all over the inside. When I confronted my wife about it, she confessed that it was left in the back of the fridge, and that she forgot about it. I felt sorry for the meat, but it was so disgusting that I immediately took it out of the fridge and threw it in the trash can. I went to work, but that night when I got back home, I sat down and saw that we were having fried noodles for dinner. I took one bite, but then I could taste the rotten smell across my mouth, so I immediately ran to the kitchen sink and threw it all back up. While being overwhelmed with nausea, I looked into the trash can by the kitchen sink, and I could see the pack that I had thrown away that morning, but empty. Wait a minute. Don't tell me that you used that meat. I was turning more and more pale by the minute, to which Wendy replied,
"Oh, how did you know?"
She said that as if it was nothing. Apparently, she thought that she could cover it up with the flavor of the sauce. I couldn't stop throwing up, and I felt so sick in my mouth and my stomach that I rinsed my mouth multiple times. As I was doing that, I got an intense pain in my stomach, and I ran to the toilet. I couldn't get up. In the end, I ended up running into the hospital in the middle of the night. After that, I ended up being placed on a drip for a couple of hours.
Because my mom always said that as long as you get the heat through it, it would be fine. I was taught that if you do that the heat would kill all the bacteria.
She said. Perhaps because she was raised in a household like that, it seems that my wife had a stronger stomach than me, and she was fine. Wendy was always trying to reduce the amount of raw trash, and she would even cut up the skins and the cores and throw them into the cooking. It was to the point where she would even reuse the fish bones. Out of habit for having this way of thinking, she would often just let things rot in the fridge. Because things would be on sale, she would buy them in large quantities. But she didn't try to do anything to make it last longer, so they wilted away. And when it came to vegetables, they would get mushy as well. Of course, every time that happened, I would get angry. But then Wendy would get even angrier at me in return, and she didn't try to fix it at all. So I was getting tired of it, and that's how she would brush it off. However, if you're going to say that, then my wife was the one who was wasting the sacrificed meat and making it inedible. And for someone like her who would just let expiration dates go on for days without caring, I couldn't listen to anything she said. More than anything, I couldn't keep up with her way of thinking that just because she was fine, I should be fine too. A few days after that, I decided to call my in-laws and tell them the situation that I was in. I told them how I ran to the hospital, and I asked them to please talk to her with me. But then...
That's an easy problem to fix. All you have to do is manage the produce yourself.
And in turn, I was yelled at. And that was the end of it. Even though my mother-in-law had some responsibility in making my wife this way, I was devastated that she wouldn't even try to help me one bit. My wife didn't change anything, and she would let the food rot, but still insist on using it because it was a waste. I was reaching my limit of living with a wife like this. But then one night, my wife invited me to nighttime activities.
I think I want kids soon,
she said, and it sent chills down my spine. My wife and I had spoken before that we wanted to enjoy our newlywed life, and for the first year, we would enjoy our lives together and not try to have children. But now, as long as my wife wasn't going to fix those actions of hers, I thought it would be dangerous to have a child. Since my wife was an anti-waste monster, as soon as she stopped breastfeeding, she would probably give rotten things to the baby, thinking it was fine. And not only that, but behind my back. when I wouldn't be able to stop it? If it's me, I can just still spit it back out, or I can go to the doctor and have a drip put on me, and I would be fine. However, if you feed a newborn baby something like that, there's a chance that the baby's life would be at risk. And when I thought about that, I decided to reject my wife's advantages. Obviously not. Until you do something about that cooking of yours, we're definitely not going to have kids.
That's terrible! How could you tell me not to have kids?
She started crying, but that didn't change the way I thought. However, my wife took this conversation to her parents and complained to them. Of course, my in-laws wanted grandchildren as soon as possible, so they were furious when they found out. They barged into my house, and my father-in-law raised his voice. Hey, you! I heard you told my daughter that you didn't want children. I bet it's just because you don't have any sperm. That's why you said such a thing to my daughter, isn't it? You useless piece of crap! You're not a man! You're not a son-in-law either! You need to get down on your knees and apologize to my daughter! He came in yelling at me, and it pissed me off. But I stayed calm and explained the reason why I didn't want to have children. However, my in-laws refused to even try to hear me out. After he caused a tantrum in front of me and then went home, my wife continued to insist that I was wrong, and I could feel my feelings towards my wife start to freeze away. That's why I said to her, I'm sorry, but I can't be with you anymore like this. I want to divorce. When I said that, with extreme force, she yelled,
In that case, you need to pay a settlement fee. If you're saying we're going to get a divorce just because you want to, then you need to pay $100,000. If not, then I'm not going to sign the papers.
If she was going to say this much, I didn't think there was any point staying with her anymore. But then I remembered that weekend we were going to have a certain gathering with her family. My wife's family had a lot of relatives, and once a month, they would take turns hosting everybody and cooking a meal for a dinner party. And then I overheard them talking about who was going to be hosting this month. So I asked them to please let us host it. And then they quickly agreed to it, so I informed my wife. Then perhaps my wife thought that I gave up on the divorce. Or perhaps she wanted to present her proud cooking. But she quickly agreed. I already expected this. But about 4 weeks before the dinner party, she started buying large amounts of produce and meat on sale. And then she left it out. After that, I went to work. And I asked if they had any short-term business trips coming up. And they told me that they had one that week that was going to be 7 days. So I left the house. And then I made the schedule so that I would be coming home the day before the dinner party, so I could escape from my wife's cooking for that week. That day, my wife spent all morning in the kitchen cooking, and one by one, she lined up the plates. When it became the evening, the relatives slowly piled into our house. And around 7 p.m., we all cheered, and everyone was about to start eating. I thought it would be dangerous to have everybody eat the rotten foods together all at once, so I asked them not to eat just yet. And then, in front of everybody, I told them that I was planning on divorcing my wife, and that this food was the reason. When I told them why, everybody started to smell the food closely. And when they looked at the meat, they all started to scrunch their faces. What is this? This is rotten! If I smell it carefully, it smells terrible! He's right. If you look closely, this meat has changed color to green.
This one too?
People were raising their voices left and right around the table. That was when I revealed to everybody that I tried to confront my wife about using these kinds of products, but that she refused to listen. And that I even went to the hospital and had to get a drip. I told them how when she said she wanted kids, I said no, because there was no way that I could let a child eat this food. But that in turn, her parents turned on me, and that they belittled me, calling me useless and spermless. Then, I can't believe you would make your husband eat this food! Are you trying to kill him? How do you raise somebody that they cook such terrible food? Wait a minute! Do you have a life insurance policy on him?
I can't believe that you would let this child eat this kind of food every day growing up.
Everybody turned to my wife and her parents and started roasting them. My in-laws had shrank so small, and in the end, my wife started crying. As a result, nobody touched the food that my wife made, and the dinner party ended very early. After that, I handed my wife and her parents the divorce papers that I had already signed, and simply said, "We're getting a divorce." Perhaps my wife finally realized after being confronted by everybody, and she started crying and begging that she didn't want to get a divorce. But after everything that she and her parents said to me, I had no intention of starting over. And then, one of the relatives said to her parents, "A divorce is obvious. Now you need to hurry up and sign those papers. I have never, in my life, seen green meat on a plate." After being cornered by everybody, they forced my wife, who was sobbing in a pool of tears, to sign it. After that, this incident caused my wife to be depressed and move back home. And apparently, my parents are being scolded by their relatives daily. However, I was truly relieved. I really am glad that we hadn't tried for children. For a while after that, I was hesitant about marriage. But if I were to be able to meet somebody again, next time, I hope that it's somebody with a more normal take on food.
I was living with my husband David and our daughter, who was already in high school. My husband's brother Kevin got married later, and right now his oldest is 3 years old, and the youngest is about 6 months old. However, that younger baby has Down syndrome, and Kevin's wife, Karen, had become frantic about it. According to Kevin and Karen, apparently until the baby was born, they never could have imagined that he would be born with Down syndrome. For the record, my brother-in-law was 40 years old and his wife was 42. Everybody around them thought that they would be prepared for the worst because she was giving birth at that age. Because her friends and the others around her who'd given birth at that age were fine. Apparently, they didn't even think for a second that their child might be born with any kind of abnormality. Because I have never given birth to a child with Down syndrome, I only know how difficult it could be based on what I've heard from others. That's why I can't say much. But both Kevin and Karen are saying pretty awful things, which I didn't think was right either. Then one day, I had gone to the mall to do some shopping. I was walking around looking for all kinds of things in a giant mall when I caught a glimpse of someone that looked like it could be my sister-in-law. I didn't want to talk to her, so I ignored her, but something felt strange about it, so I turned back and looked for her. But then, even though she had a baby in her arms earlier, this time her hands were empty, so without thinking, I walked over to her. "Hey, I got a glimpse of you earlier, but what happened to your baby?" And then I couldn't believe the words that came out of her mouth next.
Oh, that kid. We don't need it anymore, so I threw it away.
Huh? What do you mean? Where?
Who knows? I forgot already. Because we don't need it. Plus, somebody probably took her away by now.
After she said that, my sister-in-law walked away. I tried to run after her immediately. But I was more worried about the baby actually getting taken by somebody. So I ran into the bathroom and looked in places where the baby might be left behind, and I found her left in the handicapped toilet. Oh, thank goodness. Really, thank goodness. With the baby in my hands, I panicked and called both Kevin and Karen, but neither of them would answer their phones. So I immediately called my husband and had him get in touch with his twin brother. When Kevin found out what happened, he panicked and rushed home, but nobody was there. And all that was left was divorce papers and a letter on the table.
I can't look after the younger child, and for the sake of the older child's life, please divorce me. Please have your sister-in-law take care of the younger one. I don't need a child like that. It's not fit for me.
Apparently, that's what it said. I had my husband leave work early, and I also went back home to my place. My brother-in-law also came to our place, but he was going into a panic about the situation. My sister-in-law was quite a career woman. She was working at a very famous major company and was currently on maternity leave. Apparently, Karen's plot was to divorce her husband and work while only supporting the other child. It was so selfish that, of course, my husband and I were against it. After that, Kevin went to go look for his wife. We had the baby to take care of, and because we thought Karen might come back, we decided to wait at home. During that time, we also contacted David's parents. Apparently, Karen was wandering around town, and Kevin found her, and he brought her back. After that, my in-laws tried to talk to Kevin and Karen and convince them otherwise. But without even getting the divorce, Karen simply insisted that she doesn't need a child with Down syndrome, that it didn't match with her. And because that was all she said, it wasn't even a conversation. That being said, even if they left the baby with us, that would be too difficult too. But apparently both Kevin and Karen seemed like they were waiting for me to say I would take their baby in, and they kept looking over at us. For the record, Kevin and Karen were always looking down on me for not going to college, and at my husband, who only got his associate's degree. So to be honest, I never liked them much. I didn't have any desire to help them out at all. But then, in a bit of anger, Karen said,
"You didn't even go to college, so I bet you don't even have any expectations from anyone. And it would probably be easier for you to raise a kid with Down syndrome."
As if to hop on board with that, even Kevin said,
That's true. You're also a full-time housewife, so you have the time. I'm sure you would be able to properly take care of a kid with Down syndrome. Plus, your kid is already grown up. You have plenty of hands to help, don't you?
When he said that, my husband snapped, and he and his brother Karen screamed when her husband was hit. But as if to say it was obvious for him to get hit, everybody at the table just stared at them with cold eyes. With his twin brother on the ground, my husband hit him a number of times, saying,
"How dare you try to get my kid to look after a child when you can't even look after your own child? You too! You should be ashamed! You're both human trash, scumbags!"
His parents stepped in to stop him straight away, but in the end, David's parents said that they would look after the baby. But then Kevin said,
"If you guys aren't gonna take it, David, then maybe I'll take it to an orphanage."
We were all shocked. It was almost as if to say that we were in the wrong for not taking in their baby, and I was furious. For the record, both my mother-in-law and father-in-law were close to 70, and even if they were to take the child in for some time, it would be difficult for them to raise them, both age-wise and stamina-wise. Not even a few days later this time, Karen's parents came storming into our house. Apparently, her parents also felt the same way that they did, not wanting a grandchild with Down syndrome. As soon as they barged into the front door, they started saying the most ridiculous things to me, and I thought it was a joke. According to them, a child with Down syndrome is going to need heart surgery and specialized training at the child care facility, and that their daughter was so busy with work that she wouldn't be able to do that, and that Karen herself said that she refuses to quit her job. But when it comes to me, I'm a full-time housewife, so I have plenty of time. On top of that, Karen had a younger brother who wasn't married yet, and they have talks of trying him with the daughter of a wealthy family. But if they found out that the child with Down syndrome in their bloodline, they might call off the wedding. However, because my husband and I both didn't have a higher education, that it shouldn't be a problem for us. Because they failed at throwing the child away for now, they were going to immediately remove the baby from the family tree and switch the baby into our family and make it as though it never existed in theirs. What they were saying was so outrageously selfish that I lost it like my husband. All of you need to stop messing around. Children are not objects. Don't you feel sorry that you're just doing whatever you want without even considering the child? Get out! And I kicked Karen's parents out of the doorway. It had been a long time since I had gotten this angry and raised my voice like that, so for a while I stood there in the doorway unable to move. After that, my husband came home from work, and when I told him what happened, he picked up the phone immediately and called his twin brother in a huge rage. And then he instructed for me and my daughter to go take refuge in my parents' house for a while. It's not that everybody around us was an enemy, but he said he didn't know what somebody might do. I didn't want to take any chances. I also recognized that this situation wasn't normal, so I decided to go with my husband's plan. Luckily, my parents lived just 3 stops away from our house, so my daughter wouldn't be troubled by it either. That's why we waited for her to come home from school, and the two of us would pack our bags. My husband was going to stay home, and we decided to run away to my parents' house for a short time. Then my husband had snapped, and after that, he went and stormed into both his brother's company and Karen's company and explained to them just how much trouble they were causing our family, and what horrible things Karen was trying to do with her own child. Apparently, he exposed everything. For the record, Kevin had graduated from a prestigious university, and he had a pretty impressive business record. I remember him saying that in the next evaluation, there were rumors that he was going to be promoted. But all of this went right out the window. The same for his wife as well. Especially because Karen was also on maternity leave. When the company found out about the situation, they were appalled. My husband was smart, and he had taken a voice recording in the middle of the commotion. So when he played that recording to them, her colleagues were saying things like, "She's not human. There's no point in the maternity leave." And it caused a huge commotion in the company. That they got back to Karen, and it just caused chaos. Both Kevin and Karen tried to break into our house together. But knowing that this might happen, David had already called the police ahead of time, and even though they both came with farming tools as weapons, they were immediately taken away and arrested by the police. On top of that, apparently Karen's parents had also sent a threatening letter to my husband saying things like that they were going to curse him and kill him, and that he'll never be forgiven, and they were also arrested straight away. Because we also had a daughter, I thought I was really glad that we listened to him and escaped, because if they tried to take our daughter hostage, I don't know what my husband and I would have done to them. After that, because they had committed a crime as soon as they broke into the house, I heard that both Kevin and Karen were fired from their companies. Regardless of the situation, it's unbelievable as parents and as humans to try to erase their existence of a baby. They were both always bragging to us that they had higher education and higher paying jobs. But now I heard that they are living on the verge of homelessness. Even though they were trying to get rid of their child thinking that it would tarnish their lives, in the end they ruined their own lives. And I truly think that they're idiots for it. In the end, after we discussed it, my husband's parents ended up taking the baby in. And they said that they were also going to make sure Kevin took full responsibility for his actions. Neither of them have a career anymore anyway. Even though the child had such terrible parents, I really do hope that they find happiness after this.
My name is Sarah. 5 years ago, I discovered that my husband was having an affair and we got a divorce. And I became a single mother when my daughter Sally was still 1 year old. And I was working full-time while raising a child. In order to raise my 6-year-old daughter by myself as a divorced woman, I started working at an SME as a full-time employee. And every day, my life was very busy. My daughter was born with an illness, and she had often been in and out of the hospital throughout her life, so I needed the money to pay the hospital bills. That's why I put my blood, sweat, and tears into my work, and I was promoted. And with the support of my parents back home, I was working and raising my daughter, and I did everything that I could to support my daughter with her illness. However, there was one thing that was troubling me. That was that the managers at my office told me that I didn't know my place getting promoted as a woman, and I was being harassed every single day. I was on the verge of a mental breakdown from the stress. However, for the money for my daughter, I tolerated it, and I just focused on getting my work done and was taking the harassment every single day. As a result, I got more and more clients, and I had the highest performance in the department. I felt like all of my hard work until now was being acknowledged, and my motivation towards my job only increased. I continued to focus only on getting promoted again, and I was putting my all into work, when one day I got a call from the hospital that my daughter's health had suddenly declined, and I rushed to the hospital as fast as I could. I could tell in one glance that my daughter's situation was far worse than it was when I saw her the day before. By the time I got there, she was already weak, and even though she was conscious, she started responding less and less when I called out to her, and eventually she lost consciousness. By the next day, my daughter had passed. After losing my daughter at the young age of 6, I was at the pit bottom of devastation, and every day I was drowning myself in tears. I was so overwhelmed with sadness that I had taken some time off of work, but I didn't want to make my daughter worry from heaven, and I knew that I needed to hurry up and get my life back somehow, so I worked hard to change my mindset. After some time, I was able to regain my physical and mental health, and when I thought I recovered, I went back to work. But my colleagues and my team were all treating me like an open wound, and I felt uncomfortable being in the office. On the lunch break of the day that I came back to the office, I was called out by my manager and boss, and I was lectured for hours about the reason why I had taken so much time off of work.
You're a salary thief for taking so many days off when you had just been promoted, you woman with no manners! It's just as the boss says. Just because your daughter's dead doesn't mean you can go around trying to get everybody's sympathy. You need to apologize for taking those days off.
It is so wrong to take time off of work when your family member has passed away?
Don't talk back to me! As a punishment, you're going to be working overtime every single day starting today. And you're going to work the amount that you took off before you go home. Boss, why don't we leave our work with this woman so that we can go drinking? We haven't been able to go drinking lately because she took those days off. So of course, this is only obvious. That's true. Hey, you need to prepare these materials too. If you don't finish them by tomorrow, we're not going to let you get away with it for nothing. Even if it takes you all night, you better finish them. Do you understand?
This is too much.
This is your punishment for taking time off. You better finish it all.
From there, the harassment from my managers escalated and became even worse than before. Every single day, they were dumping more and more work on me. I was spending these hellish days, and eventually it was the day before my daughter's memorial service. The next day, because I had such an important matter, I was rushing so that I could finish my work and go home early. But then my boss came over to my desk.
I heard you're taking tomorrow off again for some family matter. My goodness. Your habit of being lazy amazes me.
I'm not being lazy, it's my daughter's memorial service.
It's already that time, huh? Even still, you really are a good-for-nothing woman. That you can't even give birth to one daughter with a healthy body.
That's enough already.
How unlucky could she be that her father ran away and she was already sad? But then she had to die due to illness. It really makes me cry. Are you sure you're feeling the responsibility for it?
What would you know about any of this? You don't even know anything, so please stop saying whatever you want about it.
Excuse me? Who do you think you are? All you do is think about whatever excuses you can to take time off of work. I've never met someone so pathetic. Your daughter is dead already, so you can work more overtime, can't you?
I had finally lost to my boss's completely heartless words, and I let loose on everything that I had been holding in until then. That's enough already. It's amazing that you can say such awful things after using people however you want, even when I'm going through such a difficult time. Do you not have this thing called humanity? I am going to be quitting a company like this right now, and I will never come back to this place ever again. I said that I was quitting, and I flew out of the office. I went outside to cool my head, and once I regained my composure, I went around to the clients that had been good to me and paid my respects. And then, after every single company, they said that they were disappointed to see me go, and I realized that just how much my worth ethic until now had been recognized. And then, amongst my clients, when I went to go greet the biggest company out of them all, the CEO said that he wanted me to tell him the details of why I was quitting. As I was speaking to him, the tears started overflowing, and when I explained all the harassment I received until now, the CEO said the most shocking words.
Is that so? That must have been hard. Well, I want to talk to you about something. But how would you like to come to our company?
What? But what do you mean by that?
I'm asking you if you'd like to work full-time here. I've seen just how hard you work since the first day you came here, and I've been wanting to bring you over.
Thank you very much. And so, on the day that I decided to resign from my company, I was already given a contract from an even bigger company, and with the advice from my new company CEO, I decided to sue my former bosses. The CEO introduced me to a top-class lawyer who took my side, and I was paid a full settlement fee from both of them. My former boss's harassment was discovered by their company, and apparently they were given a salary deduction. After that, around the time I was starting to get used to my job in my new company, my harassing boss from my previous company came for a business meeting, and I saw him for the first time in a long time. Compared to before, the boss seemed a little bit tired. Not knowing anything, I sat down in front of him right next to the CEO, and when he saw me, my former boss seemed very surprised.
What the hell are you doing here? Even though you quit your job, what's going on that you're here at our client's place?
Long time no see, sir.
I was the one that brought Sarah here myself. More importantly, you think that it's okay for you to speak like that to one of our company's employees? If you brought her here, are you telling me that this woman is working at this company now?
That would be correct.
That's outrageous! There's no way that someone like you should be working at a company this major! At your company, not only did you force Sarah to work overtime right after she had just lost her daughter, but you also threw horrible words at her and really made her suffer. No way. Sarah, I'll apologize about that. As you can see, I'm sorry. So please, will you please convince your CEO somehow? Please!
When the CEO said that he was still going to cancel the contract, the boss suddenly got down onto his knees.
Ever since you quit, there's been an endless number of companies that are canceling their contracts with us. Thanks to that, our company's in a huge deficit!
As he said that, he crumbled down to the floor, but I left him behind as I walked out of the room for my CEO's orders. The CEO officially renounced the contract, and my former boss was kicked out of the company. After that, that boss never showed his face at our office again, and a few months later, the company went bankrupt. The harassing managers had not only had to pay the settlement fee to me, they had their salaries reduced, so they no longer had any money. And after the company went bankrupt, I heard they were all struggling to make ends meet. My former boss lost his job just before retirement, so his wife and child left him and he was divorced. He was no longer able to pay the loan on his house, and he had no choice but to put his place up for sale. According to the rumor, I heard he moved into a tiny old apartment after that, but he couldn't find another job and was no longer able to pay rent. And after missing too many payments and getting kicked out, I heard that he's currently homeless and unemployed. As for me, my hard work has been acknowledged at my new company, and I was promoted again and increased my salary. There are no bosses here who harass me, and it's a really great environment, and I have been able to work comfortably. I was finally able to get back on my feet from the sadness of losing my daughter, and I was able to find a new purpose in life through my work. And now, I'm gonna continue working hard for the CEO that brought me here, and for my daughter up in heaven. My name is Sarah. I live with my husband Ryan and our 3 children, but suddenly one day I lost my husband due to illness, and I was left to raise my kids alone. My husband was kind, passionate about his work, and really helpful at home with the kids too. He was an ideal husband like you would see in the movies. Ever since his illness was discovered, I desperately tried to support my husband, but he was given 2 months to live, and soon after he passed away. Because my husband was still young, we weren't able to receive a very high insurance payout, and even though we received a survivor's pension after that, it cost money to raise 3 children, so I thought about finding a job. After the funeral, as I was cleaning up my husband's room, I found a bank book that contained all of his savings, as well as a will that he must have written when his illness was discovered. That will read,
With this money, please stay as a full-time housewife as you have been until the children get old, and so that you can be by their side.
My husband's hobby was always to save, and there was over $200,000 in his account that he had left while he was still alive. When I read the will, I thought it was very like Ryan, who was always thinking about the kids. But then I imagined my husband and how much he loved them, and it brought tears to my eyes. After reading his will, just as he had said, I vowed to put my all into my children, when suddenly one day my mother-in-law showed up. My mother-in-law had always been dirty with money, and before Ryan passed, she would come to ask for large amounts of money. And every now and then she would come begging to borrow money from us. On top of that, her harassment towards me was terrible, and every time that we would go back to Ryan's family's house,
"You useless full-time housewife daughter-in-law, if you have no intention of earning money, then get a divorce."
she would say things like that to me. When my husband found out, he was furious, and he said that he wanted to cut all ties with his mother. With all of that in the past, when his illness was discovered, my husband made sure not to leave a single penny for his mother. Even when he was in the hospital, she never worried about him and never once came to visit the hospital. And yet, she suddenly showed up to my house and said that she wanted to know the exact details of the will that Ryan left behind. When I told her that he didn't leave a single penny for her without sugarcoating anything, my mother-in-law, who had been acting like she was sad until now, suddenly burst into a tantrum. I saw my children who were there start shaking in fear, and I knew that I needed to somehow kick my mother-in-law out of there as soon as possible.
"He didn't leave a single penny for his mother. You need to ignore that will, and you better give me that money."
That's not going to happen. Following a will is demanded by law, and as you can see here, doesn't it say that all of this inheritance is to be used for the children?
"For the children? Well then, hand over those children and all that inheritance."
There's no way I'm gonna do that. If you're just here for money, then please go home now. When I tried to kick her out, my mother-in-law went crazy, and she grabbed the scissors that were nearby and ran straight towards my young children.
"So you don't care what happens to them? Why don't you shut your mouth and listen to me?"
Mommy, I'm scared. Don't worry, everybody come over here. Come and hide behind your mom. My mother-in-law then turned towards us, and as she was swinging the scissors at me, it was right at the moment. My mother happened to come by coincidence because she was worried about me after my husband passed away, and she had called the police and they came running over. Of course, my mother-in-law was arrested on the spot. Even though she was given a harsh warning from the police, even after that, my mother-in-law's harassment only escalated from there. The pots in our yard were shattered, our windows would get shattered, and her terrible harassment continued as we had to live in constant fear. There were times that I would get overwhelmed with sadness, wishing that my husband could be here in times like this, but I told myself over and over again that I had to protect my children, and I did everything I could to stay strong. I thought about going to the police again, but I thought that maybe my mother-in-law had gone a little crazy because she had just lost her son as well, so I decided to assess the situation for a while. However, no matter how much time passed, she never stopped harassing us. If I was at home, she would bang on the front door, and she would yell so loud that it would cause a neighborhood disturbance.
"You thief, you wretched woman! Give me back my son's money!"
Excuse me? Please don't yell that loud.
"You better shut up when you're the thief. I'm the one that raised my son, you know. I don't care if you're the wife or whatever you are, but there's no way that I'm gonna let you steal the inheritance. Now hurry up and hand over the money."
You're causing a disturbance in the neighborhood, so please, please leave us.
"As if I'm gonna leave until you hand over that money."
As she said that, my mother-in-law continued to bang on the door for hours, and all I could do was hold my children who were shaking inside of the house. Don't worry, your mom is right here.
I'm so scared. Daddy, help us.
The children were longing for their dad, and they started crying. That was when I felt all the sympathy towards my mother-in-law disappear from inside of me. It may be true that she was the one that gave birth to my husband and raised him, but I know that what my mother-in-law was doing right now was something that my husband would have hated. When I thought that, I felt a sharp pain in my chest. After causing quite the commotion, perhaps she got tired, because she finally went home. When the banging on the front door calmed down, the children must have been exhausted because they fell asleep straight away. Seeing their faces as they fell asleep, I thought that there must be something more that I could do to help return their lives back to peaceful days and safety, and I started to think of a plan for the future. As a result, I felt I had no choice but to go to the police, and the next time my mother-in-law tried to harass us, I vowed to call the police and report her immediately. But then one day, when I got home from grocery shopping, my house was surrounded by police cars and an ambulance, and there were people crowding all around. I panicked and ran over, and that was right as my mother-in-law was being carried out in a stretcher. She was unconscious, and there was blood streaming from her head, and her clothes were covered in dirt. That strong attitude that she had just a few days ago almost felt like a myth because she looked so weak. And as I watched my mother-in-law get carried away, I couldn't hide my shock. I couldn't understand what was going on when the police came over to talk to me. According to them, while I was out buying the groceries, they found my mother-in-law in the lawn collapsed with blood streaming from her head. They asked me if I might have any idea what was going on, and I explained to them the recent harassment that she had been inflicting on us. When the police went around the neighborhood to ask around and investigate, there was a witness in the neighborhood that said they saw her trying to get into the house from the second floor window, but that her foot slipped and they saw her fall to the ground. My mother-in-law must have scoped around the entire house before confirming that she wouldn't be able to sneak in through the first floor, and she must have thought that if she got up to the second floor, she would be able to break in. When the policemen heard that, they confirmed the belongings of my mother-in-law, and they found a hammer to break the window, as well as kerosene and matches. This was after my mother-in-law had already been transported to the hospital, so the police said that they would ask her about the situation when she regained consciousness, and they left. The next day, my mother-in-law woke up. However, she became paralyzed from the waist down, and she was left to be in a wheelchair. She went to physical therapy and slowly started to regain motion, and that was when she was transported from the hospital to police station for questioning.
What is this?
That looks like a hammer, matches, and kerosene.
What were you trying to do with these items?
Well, that's,
There was somebody who saw you climbing up on Miss Sarah's roof. What were you trying to do? Speak the truth.
After the intense interrogation from the police, they discovered that my mother-in-law was planning on stealing my husband's bank book that he left an inheritance in, as well as his seal, and then burning down my house.
I didn't do anything wrong. That woman tried to steal my son's inheritance all to herself. You shouldn't be arresting me. You should be arresting that thief.
You're the one who tried to steal.
That's not true. Look at the body that I've been left with, and I don't have much life left. There's no way I want to be arrested. Let me go home.
You did this to yourself, didn't you?
What are you saying that I did? All I did was try to set the bad guy straight.
As we keep saying, you're the bad guy.
Excuse me? Whatever. Just hurry up and bring me that woman, and send her behind bars for being a thief.
Of course, there was no way that was going to pass, and my mother-in-law was, of course, arrested. After that, with her lower body still paralyzed, she was sent off to prison, and she was going to spend the rest of her life as a criminal behind bars. As for me, after my mother-in-law was arrested, I was finally able to regain peace in my life with my kids. We were slowly starting to stand back up from the sadness of losing my husband, and I vowed deep in my chest that I would stay strong as a single mother for my kids. And I have no doubt that my husband is already rooting for us from heaven. After that, there was no need for them to fear my mother-in-law anymore, and my children finally started to smile again. I think we are all looking towards a brighter future ahead. You often hear stories about a wife's hellish life living with her husband's parents and getting harassed by them, but I was confident that that would never happen to me. I have always been the type that could clearly say if I didn't like something, and I was prepared to go hand in hand to fight it if it came down to it. However, when I did start living with them, I came to find out that harassment wasn't the only pain that comes from living with in-laws. This is a story about a time I got sweet revenge on my mother-in-law, who would fake an illness to leave anything that was a chore to somebody else. My name is Hannah, 27 years old. I am in my 3rd year being married to my husband, Michael, and I'm a full-time housewife. We don't have any kids yet. I met Michael through an introduction from a mutual friend, and I fell in love with his kind personality, and we began to date. Even after we got married, that didn't change, and right now, I don't have any concerns. But there was just one thing that was giving me a headache. That would be this woman, Michael's mother. Recently, Michael's father passed away, and Michael said that he wanted his mother to live with us, and that was 3 months ago. I wouldn't say that I got along particularly well with my mother-in-law to begin with, but I have always had a strong personality, and when I began living with her, I was fully ready to fight back if she ever tried to harass me. However, well, this person was quite the pain. She wasn't the type to harass her daughter-in-law like you see in other stories, and it wasn't like she was bullying me either, but if there was anything she didn't want to do, she would say that her head hurt, or that she was going to die, and she would be overdramatic and use a fake illness to dump it all onto those around her. And this was a huge pain. When we were going to live together, we had promised that we would divide up the chores and take turns. But as soon as she moved in, she was always lazing around, and she didn't lift a finger towards the chores. Hey, today was a day to take out the trash, wasn't it? But you didn't take it out.
Oh, I've had a headache all day. I'll make sure I take it out next week.
I also had things to do, so it wasn't like I could keep an eye on her the entire day and make sure that she was doing the chores. However, even in the middle of the hot summer, she would leave raw trash out. It was really causing problems. Michael tried to tell her a number of times as well, and even if she would listen at that time, she would immediately go back to her old ways. Not only that, but if I would try to ask even the littlest thing of her, she would light up in flames and lose her temper at me. Hey, you didn't do the laundry again, even though it's already this late. Even if we do them now, they're not going to dry.
Oh, today my leg has been hurting so much.
That's what you're saying, but you're holding the other leg from yesterday.
What the hell? Who do you think you are? I'm telling you that my leg hurts, and yet you're telling me that I need to do the laundry. What are you gonna do if I die because my legs hurt too much?
There's no way that you're gonna die from something like that.
Wow, what a monstrous daughter-in-law you are. You murderer! Murder!
And just like this, my mother-in-law would watch TV all day, and she would just lay around on the sofa every day. I tried to talk to her a number of times, but every time she would say,
I can't breathe, oh, I can't breathe.
or,
even though I'm suffering this much, you're still trying to tell me to do it. Are you telling me that I should die?
and it wouldn't even be a conversation. I was getting really tired of this mother-in-law, but then one day, an incident occurred that I just couldn't let go. One day in the evening, my mother-in-law's friend named Miss Williams suddenly came over to her house, but oh my, Miss Williams, what's the matter all of a sudden? My mother-in-law's actually not home right now.
About that, I'm being a little bit troubled by that mother-in-law of yours.
And I was shocked by the words that came out of her next. To my disbelief, every single time that my mother-in-law was going out to eat with her friends, she was asking them to pay for her.
Every single time that this bill would come, without fail, she says that her head hurts or something, and she disappears. We don't really have a choice, so we have been paying on her behalf, but we haven't been able to get any of it back from her, and the other friends are pretty angry as well.
How can this be? Isn't this a scam? Not only is she doing it in the house, I couldn't believe that she was faking illnesses to cause trouble outside as well. I couldn't keep my mouth shut any longer, and so I decided to enlist the help of Miss Williams and give my mother-in-law a taste of her own medicine. This was the plan. First, Miss Williams was going to invite my mother-in-law to a meal as usual. We asked her to reserve a restaurant that was pretty expensive. And then, around the time that the bill was going to come, everybody would disappear and leave my mother-in-law there alone, exactly as she was doing to them all this time. Well, then, as for how that plan went,
Phew, that was delicious. I'm gonna go use the restroom.
Okay, go ahead.
after eating such a delicious meal, my mother-in-law came back to the table looking very satisfied. However,
Oh my, are you all leaving already?
About that, suddenly my head started to hurt. Well then, sorry, excuse me.
My leg are also hurting, so if you excuse me.
What? So suddenly? Ouch, ouch, if I don't go home, I'm going to die. See you. What? Hey, wait. You all just left me by myself, my goodness. Well then, thanks for the meal.
Excuse me, ma'am. You still haven't paid for your bill.
when she heard those words, my mother-in-law went pale. While my mother-in-law was in the bathroom, Miss Williams and the rest of the party had already paid for their own portion, and all that was left was my mother-in-law's part.
Well, that's strange. I thought I had handed over to someone else.
No, the other guests said that you would be paying for your part yourself. And either way, if you aren't able to pay this bill, then it will be a dine and dash. And we will be calling the police.
Apparently, my mother-in-law sweat at the restaurant staff's strong attitude for a moment, but then, as usual,
Ouch, my head hurts, ow.
and she started to use her fake illness. But of course, there was no way that the restaurant staff would be fooled by something like that.
There's no point in doing that. I'm going to call the police.
Oh, wait a minute, please. Anything but the police.
In that case, then please pay for your bill.
Well, about that, I don't have any money.
Huh? Well then, we'll hand you over to the police then.
Oh, no, please spare me of that.
You can't pay, but you don't want to be taken by the police? Well then, guess we have no choice.
And so my mother-in-law was stuck working for 2 whole days, washing dishes at the restaurant. In the end, after the first day, she raised her voice and lost her temper.
This is so busy, there's no way I can do this. You need to be a lot more considerate of me.
In that case, then you need to pay for your bill.
Shut up, you murderer!
My mother-in-law continued to throw a tantrum, and in the end, she was taken by the police. My husband and I were called by the police, and we went to go get his mother.
What the hell were you thinking? going to a place like that without any money, and then trying to get out of it by using a fake illness!
And plus, I heard that Miss Williams paid for you last time as well.
No? Well, my head.
We're not gonna fall for that anymore. This time we will front the fine payment for you, but from now on, we're gonna make sure that you do all of the chores. And if you don't want to, then we'll give you right back to the police.
Yes.
And so my mother-in-law was banned from that restaurant, and afterwards spread around town that she tried to dine and dash and then lost her temper in the restaurant. Everybody has been pointing their fingers at her whenever she goes out. I made sure to pay Miss Williams and her other friends for all the money that they had paid on her behalf. And every single time that my mother-in-law was receiving her Social Security payment, she is returning that to me little by little. Excuse me, today's the day of your Social Security payment, isn't it? Please hurry up and go withdraw it. Otherwise, I'm taking you to the police.
Yeah, I'm going right now.
One day, I was shopping at the mall. I was supposed to meet up with my friend, but she got sick the day before, so she couldn't come. I wanted to go shopping anyways, so I decided to go out on my own. The mall was pretty big. My feet were getting pretty tired. A few hours later, I was exhausted. My feet were killing me. I decided to stop by a restaurant to get some coffee. There, I ran into an old colleague of mine, Allie. She quit the company about 6 months ago. It's been forever. Maybe I should say hi. I went up to her table to talk to her, but then I realized that she was sitting with someone else. It looked like her mother-in-law. And something else caught my eye. She lost a lot of weight. When I was working with her, she wasn't really this skinny. She wasn't fat or anything, but she had lost a lot of weight. She didn't look well, to be honest. I was sitting behind her, so she didn't see me, and things kind of felt tense between her and this old lady. Then the waitress came to take their order.
I'll get the steak.
All right, and you? I'll get the omelets then.
You don't need to eat. Just get her a cup of water. Go on.
Okay.
The waitress seemed a bit confused. She looked over at Allie once again, but she didn't say anything. What's her problem? A few minutes later, the waitress brought out the food. The steak smelled really good. I could smell it from my table. But Allie, she had nothing to eat. She just sat there in silence, holding her stomach with her hands. Her husband, last time I checked, he was living out of state for work. And right before leaving the company, she told me she was moving in with her husband's parents soon. Is she okay? She was a great colleague. She was always looking out for me. She was liked by everyone. So when she told everyone that she was quitting, we all tried to stop her. Seeing her like this made me really upset. Her mother-in-law kept eating the steak in silence as Allie watched. Then,
Come on, let's go.
Okay.
they then left the restaurant. I was worried. I knew this was none of my business, but still, I wanted to talk to her. So I gave her a call and decided to meet up. Hey, Allie. Long time no see.
It's been so long. How have you been?
I'm good. I wanted to talk to you about something. The other day, I saw you at the mall, and I think you were there with your mother-in-law. And, well, I don't know how to say this, but is everything okay? Things seemed kind of tense between you two. She paused for a few seconds, then she started talking. I was right. Her mother-in-law was harassing her. I knew it. So right now, it was just her and her mother-in-law. Since her husband was always on business. Her husband sent her money every month, but her mother-in-law took it all. She didn't let Allie get a dime. According to her mother-in-law,
My son makes a lot of money, and I'm the one that gave birth to him, so I have the right to this. This is my money too. And I get to decide what to do with it.
so Allie was constantly broke, and she harassed her on a daily basis.
You're a filthy pig. You don't deserve to eat. Drink some water or something.
She didn't even let her eat properly, so that's why she's always skinny now. What's wrong with this woman? She was a big spender. She spent most of her money that her son sent Allie. Designer bags, nice restaurants, vacations, that sort of stuff. And whenever she ran out of money,
Call your husband and tell him to send more money. But tell them you spent it all, not me. Do it.
she forced Allie to get more money from her husband. I told her to talk to her husband about it, but she said that it wasn't gonna work.
If you say anything to my son, I'm gonna spread all kinds of rumors to you about the neighbors. You hear me?
Rumors?
Yeah, I'll tell everyone that you're cheating on your husband while he's away on business. and it's my word against yours, so my son will probably believe me over you.
Please don't do that.
Do as I say, and we won't have a problem.
So basically, she was threatening her. And Ali's mom, she raised her single-handedly, but now she was sick. So she spent her money every month. It wasn't much, but it was the least she could do. But her mother-in-law, she threatened to cut that off too if she did anything. So there was nothing she could do. Her husband wasn't going to come back for another year. Ali said that she was going to be fine, but I couldn't just let this slide. So I decided to take action and called my brother for help. My brother worked at the same company as Ali's husband, and my husband was his superior. My husband was actually the one who sent him abroad to work on this big project. Her husband was really good at his job, and my husband liked him very much. So when I told him about all this, he was even more willing to help. He called Ali's husband immediately. Needless to say, he was furious. My husband gave him permission to take a few days off. He flew back home right away to check on Ali. Meanwhile, his mother was harassing Ali as usual. She had no idea her son was coming home that day. Then,
What are you doing to her? Look at her!
What are you doing here? I thought you were working.
My boss told me about everything. You're the one who asked us to move in with you because you didn't want to be alone. What's wrong with you, huh?
Look, hold on. This whole thing is a misunderstanding.
How so, huh? Why isn't she eating? Stop trying to make excuses. Get the hell out of here! I want you out of my life! And all the money you took from us, you're gonna pay us back every dime!
What? How? I don't have that kind of money. And how will I make a living if you kick me out of the house? You're gonna abandon your own mother for her?
She's my wife! And after what you did to her, I don't care what happens to you! You can rot in hell for all I care!
then he kicked her out of the house.
I'm so sorry. I had no idea about any of this. I can't leave you here by yourself. Come on. Let's move somewhere far away.
Thank you. I'd like that.
So she started packing. Then the day before she was leaving, she told me to meet her at a cafe for some coffee. She had no idea that I talked to my husband about this. She said that she was really surprised to see her husband show up like that.
Thank goodness you saw me that day at the mall. If it wasn't for that, I'd still be in the same situation right now. You saved me. Thank you very much.
Of course, it was the least I could do. And my brother, he felt responsible. He was the one that sent your husband away to work on that project, so...
Oh, don't be. I know he's a good person. My husband speaks very highly of him. He said he's the best boss ever. I wanted to tell him myself, but I knew how much this job meant for him, so I didn't want to worry him, you know?
I see. Well, good luck to both of you.
Yeah, thanks.
The next day, she moved out of town with her husband. A few weeks later, a friend of mine told me that Ali's mother-in-law, she was completely broke now. She no longer had her son to leech off of, and now lived in a crappy apartment all by herself. And the neighbors, after they heard all about the horrible things she did to her daughter-in-law, they all started ignoring her. She was all alone now. Sucks for her, but oh well. She did all of this to herself, if you ask me. And all the money she stole from her son, she had to pay him back every month. She could barely make ends meet. A few months later, Ali sent me a photo of her and her husband. Looks like she was doing great. Thank goodness. When I saw her at the mall that day, I was really worried, but it was really good to see her again like this. Anyways, it was a rough couple of months, but I'm glad everything worked out for her. My name is Michelle. I'm 27 years old and I work as an administrator for a food products company. I recently got married to my boyfriend Henry, who I dated for 6 months. However, this marriage was a huge mistake. I rushed into it feeling the pressure because of my age, but at this point it was too late for regret since it was done. The reason was Henry's mom, my mother-in-law. When Henry was younger, his parents got divorced, and apparently he grew up with his mother. But when we decided to get married, he requested that he wanted to live with his mother. To be honest, I had a hard time getting on board with it. But if I were to let this opportunity pass, I might not be able to find another partner, and by then I'll be past 30 years old. Because of that, when Thomas said,
If anything happens, I promise to protect you.
I believed his words. And I unfortunately agreed to living at Henry's family's home. However, in the beginning, my mother-in-law was pretty kind. She didn't harass me at all, and I actually thought that maybe we might be able to get along well. But the incident occurred on my first payday since we started living with her.
Michelle, today's your payday, isn't it? Will you please take out your seal and your bank book?
What do you mean?
In our family, we've decided that I will be handling all of the family finances, so every month you need to be handing over your full salary.
Of course I refused, but in that instant, my mother-in-law started yelling at me.
How dare you! You are a daughter-in-law. What kind of nerve do you have to be talking back to me? I made the rules in this household.
She flipped a switch so quickly that I was so terrified, and I immediately ran into my room and somehow escaped the situation. But starting the next day, my mother-in-law began harassing me extensively. Until then, she hadn't said anything about my cooking, but then she started saying that the flavors were bad. But that I wasn't folding the laundry properly, and I could only believe that she was clearly resenting me for not handing over my full salary. In times like that, words that would always come out of her mouth were,
Even though you're just a freeloader that doesn't pay any money, you don't listen to the master of the house. What an unbelievable woman. For me, Henry begged me, and that's the only reason why I had no choice but to live with you.
But it's not like I had asked to live at the house at all. I do so much around the house that, if anything, she should be grateful, and I couldn't handle being spoken to like this. I had had enough, so I tried to talk to Henry about it, but...
Even if you talk to me about that, she's letting us stay in this house, so if you can't abide by the rules that my mom decided, then it's going to cause us both trouble.
Letting us stay here? Since when was that the story? Since when were we indebted to her? I started to be terrified of the fact that I was stuck in this house, and I started thinking that maybe I should go back to live with my parents, when the real terrifying incidents occurred. What is this? When I got home from work, I couldn't believe my eyes. The lock to the door was broken, and the room was completely trashed. I panicked, and when I looked around, as expected, my seal and my bank book were missing. It's a robbery! As soon as I thought that, I heard my mother-in-law's voice from behind me.
Oh, you're home.
Oh, a robbery! Wait, what? When I looked over at her, in her hands, my mother-in-law was gripping my seal and my savings bank book.
You really went through a lot of trouble to hide it. It took me a long time to find it.
That's my bank book.
This is all because you wouldn't hand it over. I told you, for everyone that lives in this house, I'm going to manage all of the finances.
She had crossed the line. I couldn't tolerate this behavior from her anymore, and I felt something snap inside me. What are you doing? Give it back!
Hey, stop!
I snatched my seal and my bank book out of my mother-in-law's hands, and I rushed back to my parents' house. When I got there, I was in tears, and when I explained the situation to them...
My goodness, what a crazy person! This must have been so scary.
She's insane! You need to hurry up and get a divorce immediately!
That's what they said, and with their support, I immediately signed the divorce papers and sent it to them straight away. No matter how many times I spoke to him, he refused to help me, and he didn't keep the promise he made when we got married either. I had no feelings left for the guy like that. I got multiple texts and phone calls from Henry, but of course ignored them all. But then Henry did the unexpected.
I truly am sorry. I love you. Please come back to me. I'll do anything.
Absolutely not. Get out.
Please don't say that.
Look at Henry. This is how far he's going. Why don't you let this go? I'm not mad anymore either.
To my disbelief this time, Henry and his mother-in-law showed up at my parents' house. What do you mean you're not mad anymore? Are you kidding me? My mother-in-law refused to admit to any wrongdoing. However, Henry was sobbing, and it didn't seem like he was going to leave until I agreed to get back with him. My mom saw that I was being troubled, and she intervened for me.
Excuse me, in that case, why don't Henry and his mother live with us here for some time?
What? Here?
Because Henry, you want to live together with Michelle, right? Henry wouldn't want to leave your mother by herself. And now that Michelle has come home for the first time in a while, we want to live with her too, see? At that point, we can all let it go and we can live happily together.
What on earth is she suggesting? Of course, immediately tried saying no, but my mother looked sharply at me as if to say, "Don't worry, I got this."
Really? Well then, yes, please. Mom, you would be okay with that, right? Look, they're all saying that they would let it go in that case.
My mother-in-law was flustered, but in the end, she said,
Sure, well, if that's what you guys want.
And she agreed.
Is that so? Well then, the both of you. We look forward to living with you. Yes, thank you very much.
Isn't this great? Well then now that that's settled, can you hand over your seal and your bank book?
What?
Just
like your house, at our place, I am managing all of the family finances here.
What? What? Well, don't tell me that even when you're a freeloader here, you won't say that you don't want to. If you're going to talk back to me, then let me teach you a lesson. I need to make sure I do that to a son-in-law that can't even listen.
Hey, wait, but that's...
All right, Henry. Well then, you need to start by cleaning the bathrooms first. What? Clean the bathrooms?
You're a freeloader, so isn't it obvious? By the way, our rules are our rules, so if things aren't done in accordance to our rules, we're going to have you redo it, no matter how many hours and how many days it takes.
Oh, and as for you, can you go clean the pond out in the yard? You might get a little bit cold, but you're a freeloader, so it's fine, right? Well then, let's get started right away.
What? Hey, what is this?
My father took my mother-in-law by the hand and walked her straight to the yard. Perhaps my father and my mother both had a lot of anger built up because they didn't show any mercy by going after Henry and his mother.
Please, give me a break.
What are you doing? Look here. It's still not clean, is it?
It's so cold.
Come on, put your arms all the way into the bat.
I can't do this anymore.
By the time the two of them were exhausted and fell over, it was already 2 o'clock in the middle of the night.
Oh, it's already this late. Well then, why don't we get to bed?
Yes.
Tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up by 4 a.m. and make breakfast for everybody. And then, until we get up, you're going to take out the trash and clean up the front gate.
I can't do this anymore. This is too much.
Mom, think about the time right now.
Shut up. First of all, if you hadn't married this stupid woman, none of this would have happened. Stop that.
Even though it was the middle of the night, Henry's mom started chasing him around the house and caused a huge commotion. We didn't know what to do anymore, so we called the police straight away and had them arrested. A few days later, I got a message from Henry that he turned in the divorce papers. Perhaps the payback from my parents really worked. It goes without saying that when we got the notice, our entire family celebrated together. By the way, apparently the two of them are still living together, but getting into huge fights every day. At this rate, I'm sure Henry will never get remarried again. So I hope the two of them live happily ever after together.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.